We are going to, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to the Stewards General Meeting session on COVID-19 and fiscal transparency. What have we learned? It's great to have you all here today for this, what is going to be a very insightful session. I would like to thank all the people on the other side of the world in the US that are staying up late for us. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. Also, a big welcome to people on our side of the world where it's already the next day. So it's the first day of the sessions. Some of us, we're already in the morning. So thank you very much. A bit of background into the session is that unparalleled fiscal policy responses to COVID-19 substantially increased risks for decreased transparency, misallocations, inefficiencies, and corruption. GIFT and other key stakeholders, including some of its lead stewards and partners, like people we have in the room today from the IBP and the IMF, thus appealed for fiscal transparency, citing all the benefits that it brings, including in times of emergency. Within this, GIFT members were brought together during 2020 to share thoughts, proposals, and solutions. The network's unique perspective and experiences on strategies to advance fiscal transparency was used, leveraging the collective knowledge of its stewards and partners in order to provide specific, in-depth guidance in the context of the pandemic. A product of this was the GIFT Fiscal Data for Emergency Response Guide for COVID-19 that, as many of you know, was published in August 2020. 1 year on, IBP's May 2021 study showed that more than 2/3 of the government within the study across different regions and income groups only provided limited or minimal levels of accountability in the introduction and implementation of early COVID fiscal policy responses. In many cases, spending has been done chaotically, behind closed doors, sometimes through the creation of extra budgetary funds and outside of trusted procurement and budgetary system. The lack of opportunities for affected people to have a say has had a negative impact on the poor and vulnerable, including women and children. Within the GIFT network, there have, however, been some positive and encouraging findings. In this session, we look at some of these, providing key lessons going forward. We have a rich agenda for the session today. We start off with a presentation from Jason Harris from the INF on the global transparency findings. Then we move on to Swad from the IBP, which is going to take us through the study, Managing COVID Funds, the accountability gap findings, with a specific focus on Asia. Then we will hear from countries at the center of these responses, and we'll have distinguished officials from the Philippines, Rolando Toledo, which is the Undersecretary of the Department of Budget and Management. From Indonesia, we have Rofianto Kurinuwang, Director of Budget in the Ministry of Finance. And from Mongolia, we have Narichimeng Lavsan Sharav, which is the head of the Payment Settlement Division of the Treasury Department. Then we will top all of this off with a presentation from my GIFT colleague, Ara, which will show how we have been using the GIFT guide to conduct in-depth analysis in Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, and Georgia. So we have a really rich agenda, and I don't want to delay any further. Thank you to all the presenters in advance. It is great to have you here, and we're looking forward to hearing your very useful and insights into this pandemic. So if we can start with Jason, if you're ready, please go ahead and share your presentation with us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Raquel. Well, let me first congratulate GIFT for preparing its excellent guide on emergency response that was published early on in the pandemic. We think this proved extremely useful as a framework for countries to establish their transparency and accountability standards during COVID, as we'll hear later on in the session, and help various stakeholders, including civil society, to identify the accountability gaps. 1 year later, it's indeed timely to take stock of what we've learnt on COVID-19 and fiscal transparency. So thanks very much for inviting the IMF to be part of this initiative. I'd also like to congratulate the IBP, the International Budget Partnership, for conducting in record time a rapid yet comprehensive assessment of the transparency on COVID-19 policies. I think we'll hear a little bit more about that later from Suad. But let me step back to the start of the pandemic. As early as April of last year, the IMF was advising countries to do what it takes to protect lives and livelihoods, but keep the receipts. We also said that keeping the receipts wasn't going to be as easy as it sounds. You can't just tuck them in a box and come back to them at tax time. Evidence from countries, including the IBP, have shown that this in fact wasn't easy, and that only a handful of countries have provided the adequate information on their COVID-19 response, and that more than 2/3 of governments across regions and income levels provided limited or minimal information on the introduction and implementation of their fiscal response during the period studied. But there are many lessons that can be learnt by looking at the approaches taken by various countries. The first set of lessons has to do with the many innovative practices that have emerged during the pandemic. The second lesson that I'll go through today is that it is possible to get things right, even in low capacity environments. So let me first turn to those innovative practices. Many countries have built on recent reforms or long-standing reforms of their PFM systems to implement, to track, report, control, and oversee their COVID-19 response. Some countries have implemented their measures through normal budget channels while adapting their budget nomenclature and programs, as well as their financial management systems, to better track the budgeting and execution of these measures. Others, and we're talking around 40 countries here, have established dedicated COVID-19 funds to centralise their emergency response and to keep an audit trail. Now, while in general we're not fond of extra budgetary funds at the fund, we do think that backed by strong safeguards, and in particular circumstances like the COVID-19 pandemic, they can be a pragmatic approach, particularly when PFM systems more generally are weak. Some of the other innovations that we've seen, some countries have established dedicated portals to report on their spending, including on beneficiaries, and amongst them we include Brazil, Colombia, France, Honduras, and Peru. Countries such as Ecuador, Kenya, Kyrgyz Republic, and Nicaragua have amended their procurement legal framework to require the collection of beneficial ownership information on all public contracts on a permanent basis. Some countries, such as Colombia, Honduras, and Ukraine, have added a module in their e-procurement platforms that present detailed information on all emergency procurement related to COVID-19. Other countries have allowed civil society and the media to play a role in their external oversight. Supreme audit institutions in many countries have undertaken real-time audits to tackle governance irregularities with good results in many cases. For example, in South Africa, more than 1/3 of the auditees are reported to have taken actions to address the identified irregularities. So I invite you to read the latest IMF Fiscal Monitor that came out in April 2021, which provides much more information on these innovative practices. The second point, that it's possible to get things right, even when capacity is limited. Let me zoom in on a particular case, Sierra Leone, a fragile state that scores relatively well on the IBP assessment. Now, COVID-19 is the second epidemic to hit Sierra Leone in 5 years, and it was widely documented that Ebola response in Sierra Leone was slow, fragmented, leading to a large number of extra budgetary funds, and fraught with irregularities, which were well identified in 2 audits subsequently done by the Supreme Audit Institution. Fast forward 5 years to April 22, the authorities in Sierra Leone quickly set up a single entity to centralise their COVID response, backed by legislation that provided institutional legitimacy and established the standards under which it should operate. And they also passed procurement legislation that sets reasonably high standards for procurement under emergency. The audit service undertook a real-time audit of the operations of this entity, which received the attention of the Parliament and, more importantly, the public at large. Now, despite all of these efforts to get things right under COVID, the audit still identified some irregularities, but these are now being addressed. The IMF supported the implementation of many of these measures. So let me conclude by highlighting the role the IMF has been playing in all of this. As you know, we press for better governance through greater transparency and have sought specific governance measures for countries receiving IMF financing during the crisis. These include commitments to track and report on COVID-19 spending, to publish pandemic-related procurement contracts, and importantly, the beneficial ownership of companies awarded these contracts, and then to undertake ex-post audit and publish these results. Countries have committed to these measures in their letter of intent when accessing the rapid financing from the fund. The fund also realises that addressing corruption is a long game and deeper challenges need to be addressed. This is why longer-term governance and corruption vulnerabilities will continue to be addressed under the IMF's broader 2018 framework for enhanced fund engagement and governance, with a focus on multi-year IMF lending arrangements, annual health checks of IMF member countries, and capacity development. Support on developing capacity in member countries has adapted rapidly and covered a wide range of issues related to transparency. This includes support to implement the governance measures which I mentioned earlier. As an example, we supported Sierra Leone in putting the framework in place that we mentioned earlier. But we've also worked with countries to design the unconventional fiscal response to the crisis, such as loan guarantee schemes, and to assess the fiscal risks associated with their below-the-line support during the pandemic, which, while seemingly affordable now, can be costly into the future. So the lesson from this is the transparency issues take serious investment at the beginning and sustained effort to implement and ensure that problems around governance are addressed not just now, but into the longer term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that great insight, and congratulations on the great work that the IMF is doing in this regard. Now I'd like to open it up for some questions. If anyone has any questions for Jason, please put up your hand and we can take them now. If there aren't any questions, we can move on to the IBP's findings with Swad. Okay. Swad, would you like me to share the presentation or?
I can share my screen. Thanks, Albertina, for giving me the co-host rights. Let me share this presentation. Welcome, colleagues. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining the GIFT meeting. We're so grateful for your participation, sometimes at really odd hours. And I was remembering as I was preparing this presentation that we could have been at a nice location, jet-lagged, albeit nice location, but here we are at odd hours, at least from the comfort of our house. But thank you so much again. I have been asked today to present on the findings of the COVID module that the Open Budget Initiative conducted recently. And before I start, I want to just acknowledge that we are very far from over in this crisis. And some of the findings, as you may note, even though we're a year into the period of assessment, still stand relevant today. And yes, let's hope that we can learn something from these. So around, if I was to take a step back, around this time last year, as we were, I think, all trying to assess the situation and understand what was happening, and some time had passed and we noticed this massive mobilization of resources and the scale of this crisis that affected practically every country on this planet, we at IBP decided to take stock of what is happening from a fiscal policy perspective. And so we decided to conduct a rapid assessment and that we called the COVID module. Given our mission at IBP, we decided to conduct this survey designed the methodology from the perspective of civil society organizations and around the same 3 pillars as the Open Budget Survey, which is transparency, public access to relevant information, adequate oversight arrangements, in this case in an emergency situation, and in a very limited role, but very few questions on opportunities for citizen participation. So given that we have the skill set to conduct surveys, we designed the methodology and worked with the same civil society partners that we work on the Open Budget Survey. These are about 120 countries around the world. And what we assess is the most significant emergency fiscal policy package released by the country between March and 30th September 2020. So this was the period in which the package must have been released, and we assessed the most significant package. And what we found in the survey was that we ended up assessing over 400 emergency fiscal packages. These could be supplementary budgets, these could be executive decrees, legislative acts, or even some of them passed through the annual budget. What did we find? I don't, as Jason already mentioned, we were following on the same advice, please keep the receipts. What did we find? The overall finding of our survey was that governments did fall short in managing their fiscal policy response to this crisis in a transparent and accountable manner. Unfortunately, almost 2/3 of the governments we looked at either provided limited or minimal information. Now, we did not, as in the case of OBS, we did not create a data score, but we put countries in categories. And what we did find, as Jason had mentioned also, that in the, perhaps this is a long-term solution, but some of the countries that routinely perform very well on the Open Budget Survey, unsurprisingly performed really well on this rapid assessment as well. So the first finding is that the governments failed to adopt key measures to enhance accountability. What do I mean by that? One of the, I would say, the most surprising findings or the most prominent findings for in the survey is that very few countries, almost half of the governments, published little or no information, and particularly lacking on the implementation of the policy initiatives. So how do you assess whether these policies set out, did they achieve what they were set out to achieve or not? So there's an accountability gap here. And the second finding was that almost most of the audit offices failed to adapt to this emergency crisis in real time. Almost 2/3 of the audit offices provided very minimal oversight during the crisis, but this is not to say that there are not audits being conducted later on. We were assessing real-time audits, and procurement, it's the same story. 2/3 of the countries failed to follow transparent procurement practices. The second finding coming out of this module is that the role of legislatures was severely limited during this pandemic. This is quite an important finding to my mind. Many governments we found put in place these urgent responses that essentially bypassed the legislature completely, and which is about half of the countries. So they either issued executive decrees or had some laws that they could put in place bypassing the legislature completely. And then the role of the oversight, we found that a tenth of the countries, only in a tenth of the 120 countries did legislature provide an adequate role in monitoring the implementation of their emergency resources. Thirdly, citizen participation was virtually non-existent. And fourthly, we do acknowledge that times of crisis can really be moments of good innovation. Despite we're very cognizant of the fact that governments had to act under huge pressure in a very limited time. And yet some of them managed to come up with very innovative practices that a little bit of an inside information that IBP is going to be releasing a few case studies on, hopefully by the end of this year, looking into these innovative practices. And so over here for now, I will share a few of these from the Asia region, most notably Philippines, the only country I believe from the Asia region that provided significant information, one of the most transparent for their first package, which I believe was a 3-month package before September 30th. One of the very few countries that had a good oversight practice in submitting weekly reports to the Congress. And I think we have representation from DBM here if colleagues would like to learn more about it. In Indonesia, and I know we have colleagues from Indonesia too, even our partner acknowledges that our government is very good at creating infographics in a really short amount of time and making it easily understandable to the people. And I think it's an interesting innovation and a really useful one. In Nepal, lots of protests by the people for being absolutely clueless about what happened to the emergency funds. And so there were protests on the streets, and following that, the Parliamentary Accounts Committee was charged with conducting a review, and they investigated irregularities and found irregularities in the procurement of medical equipment. In Bangladesh, the government published a really comprehensive report towards the end of 2020, reviewing not just the policy itself, but also the performance of the policy, and then used that report to conduct a series of dialogues with citizens and understand ones were perceived to be good or not. And then lastly, but never the least, Malaysia, one of the most interesting innovations was, it started with, I believe, a small unit and then just grew, was the Laksana unit. I'm really sorry, he's just come back from outside.
No worries at all.
Thank you. Was the Laksana unit, which was a unit that was created of 53 combining representation from other departments to monitor the implementation of the emergency fiscal package. And they released bi-weekly reports as well. And now I believe Laksana has become a permanent unit, and we're keen ourselves in the OBS team to find out more about this. We'll be writing a case study, and I hope I can share this with you, me and our partner think tank in Malaysia. Lastly, just very quickly, this is my last slide. As I noted that we did find that countries that have robust PFM structures tended to perform better even in times of crisis. So this is a long-term suggestion that long-term, there is value in just building a resilient system. In the very short term, I think there is value in just acting to strengthen whatever is already available. And an example is the implementation reports. Many countries produce in-year reports and mid-year reviews, and the year-end report was outside of our scope, but in the in-year reports, we could not, a handful of countries had any line item for the COVID resources. They just went on being produced just the way that they were without the fiscal package. So I think that those are key areas and easy to implement areas where the governments could act in the short term as well. And lastly, I think there is room for international actors to support the governments as well in being fully open and transparent. Thank you. That's it from my side.
Thanks very much, Swad. Very interesting. We're looking forward to seeing those case studies with those innovative practices. I think that will be very interesting. Now, do any of us have any questions for Swad that we'd like to put forward at this point? If you do, please do put up your hand.
May I?
Yes,
Put up
please
my
go
hand?
ahead.
Thank you. Well, first, I would like to underline the gratitude to Swad, who is giving us her precious time, knowledge, and experience, while others have the right of her time. So, and I'm thinking about your child. Thank you, Swad, so much for devoting time to us. One question to you and one question to Jason. Overall, do you think that we can be optimistic, given the challenges that Ministry of Finance had and the way they responded to COVID, although we knew that for the COVID funds, some of them were really short in transparency, but there are many lessons learned, and many of them have done a very significant effort to use much more technologies and to disclose timely information. Overall, do you think we can be optimistic, not for this round, probably for this year, but in 2 or 3 years, do you think this crisis will present an opportunity for more transparency, or on the contrary, you don't feel optimistic, you think that the backlash might be more permanent? And for Jason, as we know, the IMF has done an unprecedented effort to help countries as much as possible with all of the IMF instruments. And this is really putting your institution to the front line to help countries recover, but also to the limits of your capacities. So the question is, what are your concerns now that you have stretched so much? And not in your relationship with the countries, but your concerns regarding the countries. What are the mechanisms that you're putting in place, and what actors are you calling to help you out to make sure that this effort is successful?
Thanks, Juan Pablo. I can start if that's okay, Jason. Sure, thank you. Thank you for your question. Absolutely optimistic that the future will be more transparent. We have seen, if the open budget survey is any sort of a preview, we have seen modest improvements, but we have seen improvements. What I would say is that there is a gap and an opportunity for all the players, civil society, government, international actors, to work towards some set of standards during a crisis moment. So it does not have to be limited to COVID, but we all have climate change related crisis moments as well. And we all know that governments respond in various ways. And I think there should be standards around transparency around these crisis moments that just put into motion governance and accountability. That would be my response. And to the other question, if I could just respond to that. Also, there is a question in the chat, a really good question, but unfortunately the answer is no. IBP, the open budget survey, as well as the COVID module, does not assess the quality of the policy. We only assess the information and the transparency. But the idea is that if there is transparency and room for accountability and oversight, these actors will help to make a policy more robust and more aligned to what the priorities of people are. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Over to you, Jason.
I'd share your optimism, may I say. I think it's always important to put ourselves in the shoes of the policymakers and recognize that a lot of these actions were taken under intense pressure and in extremely short time frames. often we can spend years developing policies that are a sliver of the size of the policies that were rolled out in particular last year. So I think, given all of that, there was not in every case clearly, but in many cases around the world, there were some really positive steps taken. So I think that's worth lauding. I also think, the design of the initial policies, particularly when taking so quickly, will always leave some room for issues that will arise. Indeed, they're arising now in many countries. And that will empower both the community and community groups, NGOs, people who are interested in transparency, to call for greater transparency should further policy measures be required. And with more and more waves of this thing coming through, it's quite possible that there will be more. So that's really important. So on the particular question you raised for me, Juan Pablo, the IMF was certainly stretched. I don't have a number, but the number of programs that we've done, the rapid financing programs that the fund rolled out over the last year was unprecedented. It was a huge number. And every one of our country teams who are involved in that were stretched, particularly given, like everything else, it was done remotely, which is quite a thing to be negotiating a program over the small little rectangles on the screen. One thing that I do think is worth making clear is that the rapid financing programs were extremely light on conditionality. We didn't put in most of them the structural benchmarks you would see in most of our programs, and that was because we wanted that money out fast so the country would be there to support the countries. But for this group, the one thing that was in there was transparency. In almost all cases, we included these transparency. And so we're seeing that come to the fore now. We're seeing some issues with some of those transparency requirements. But I think in all cases, we're sticking to our guns on these. But what that means is that whereas transparency was, somewhat of a limited interest within the fund, certainly within the public financial management, it's been the forefront of what we think about. But for most of our area department teams, it was a kind of a side thing. All of a sudden, that's now become a major issue. And you can also see that in some of the other fund products, our governance and fiscal safeguard products, are things that encompass our legal finance department. So within the fund itself, the constituency for transparency has increased. And all of our country teams are, in most cases, our country teams are liaising with NGOs in the countries to see how these things are going on. They're not just relying on the word from the government themselves. They're looking for the evidence of it, and they're listening to what people in country are saying. So our constituency that we're working with in all of these countries we have these programs with has expanded as well. And we're paying much closer attention to them given the focus on transparency within our programs.
Thank you very much. Benjamin, you've been waiting patiently. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Congratulations for the presentation of both Jason and Swat. I have a particular question for Swat. I represent the IDI, the Intosai Development Initiative, which is connected to the Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions in the world. So I was interested in the data you provided about the audit offices that provided minimal oversight during the crisis. Because as Jason mentioned, to a certain extent, we were, at the end of the day, we were facing a disaster, and we had to manage that disaster with the best tools that were available for all the actors. And in that sense, I think that these 2/3 of audit offices that provided minimal oversight during the crisis, from my point of view, and according to the information we have, it has to do a lot with the mandate they have, the lack of resources they have, and the problems of independence they are facing in their countries, which includes a wide range of situations and conditions. In that sense, do you have an idea if this lack of time, well-timed work that should have been done by the Supreme Institution was caused due to these structural problems that, from my point of view, have been unbuilt by the crisis and should be strengthened in the future in order to be prepared to have more to have stronger Supreme institutions that could face these kind of situations. Do you have any idea if this lack of well-timed work by the Supreme institutions is caused by these structural problems related to their independence?
Thank you so much, Benjamin. That's a great question and something that we've frankly received quite a lot of feedback on. So in the COVID module, which was a rapid assessment, we were limited in our efforts to ask too many questions about audit institutions, but we asked about real-time audits and the ability of audit institutes to be able to adapt their schedule, their plans to adjust for this crisis. And to that, the response was by very few countries that yes, they adapted. One country that comes to my mind and has been highlighted, and I would hope we're writing a case study, but I can't promise I cover the Asia region, is Jamaica, that covered 3 real-time audits of the program that was implemented. As far as independence is concerned, we do ask that question in the main open budget survey, and we ask a question about resources, and then the methodology is for researchers to go and interview officials from the audit institution. I don't have the figures on that, but I agree that resources could definitely be a factor in limiting what can be done. I don't know if I'm able to give you a satisfactory answer, but I'm sure we'd be happy to discuss with you and look at it at an indicator level and what the global responses are. For the COVID module, we asked about the real-time assessment. We received, to be candid, quite a lot of pushback on not being able to do real-time audits because it's sometimes not feasible, and many countries are conducting audits once the package has been implemented.
Thank you very much. Just one quick comment. Actually, we are about to release a survey that we distributed to all the Supreme institutions that are members of INTOSAI regarding the COVID-19 management. And I think that we will have valuable information that we can share with all of you, because it will give us a very good picture about the structural problems that are facing the Supreme institutions and that should be changed in the future, especially regarding their independence. So thank you very much for your answer, Swati.
Thank you. And yeah, perhaps we can reach out to Juan Pablo and see what the areas for working together on this. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. So now we're going to move on to the Asia country experiences, which is very exciting. We're going to start off with Indonesia, then Mongolia, and then the Philippines. But before we do that, if I can ask you to please switch on your cameras so that we can get a quick screenshot, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. It's good to see all your faces.
Thank you so much. Lorena, you're there. And giving me your holiday. Thank you so much. Thanks.
How could I miss it?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm doing one quickly now.
We're smiling, Raquel, for you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Let me do another one quickly on the second screen. And I think we sorted. Thank you very much. If we can now please move on to Indonesia, if you're ready to present, that would be great. If you'd like, I can share your presentation. Oh, you're sharing. Thank you so much. Please do go ahead.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear my voice. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so for this occasion, this morning we would like to present our lesson regarding how we could handle this pandemic COVID. So we could continue with the next slide. Could be presented in the slideshow. So because the word is too small. Okay. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, basically looking back, what are the highlights on what has been accomplished? Basically, the Indonesian government, we have strong commitment how we should handle this COVID pandemic. And at the same time, it is very important to accelerate economic activity, how we should recover our economy. Therefore, an emergency action is needed because the pandemic need prompt, precise, and accountable response. So basically, as the first step to respond the urgent to have a fast response, the government of Indonesia, first, we have to establish the regulation. We are trying to maintain the accountability in handling the COVID-19. Therefore, the first step is we issue the enactment of the government regulation in lieu of law number 1 in year 2020. Basically, later, this became the law number 1 for the year 2020, approved by the parliament. So basically, this law become the base, the regulation, how the government should respond to the COVID. We can do the intervention, we can get the support from the parliament. Basically, we can take the necessary action, necessary step to handle the health sector, to provide social safety net for the people to respond to COVID. And in the implementation, our budget implementation in 2020, in the state financial report, in which is incorporated, including the stimulus package, budget allocation to support the stimulus has been rewarded unqualified audit opinion by the Indonesian Supreme Audit Board. So the Supreme Audit Board mentioned that the government able to maintain the transparency and also the accountability required action to respond to COVID. And then in the mid of the 2020, the Indonesian government also launched the COVID budget monitoring website. So basically, in the website, you could see the activity, the stimulus package provided by the government in the health sector, for social security, to support the small medium enterprise, and also tax incentive that government prepare to accelerate the economic recovery. And due to this strong action in 2020, basically Indonesian economy in the second quarter of 2021, we could able to return positive growth, 7.07% in the second quarter of 2021. So basically, we realized that last year in the second quarter, our economy grew negatively, minus 5.32. So basically, we can say that our economy already returned to the previous base before the pandemic, or even a little surpass the base before the pandemic. Next slide. So basically, what were the main challenges I think when we respond the pandemic, coordination is very important because to respond the pandemic, broad action is needed. Broad action in the whole country. We have to do the vaccination in the whole area in Indonesia. And also we have to implement discipline, yeah, the lockdown in many areas in Indonesia. That's why the coordination between the central government and regional government is also important. And when we prepare the action to support the poor, the data is very important. And I think this is the main problem in Indonesia. Because before the crisis, of course, the government provides support for the poor, provide the support for the poor family, I think only up to 18.8 million family. However, due to the pandemic, since the government doing many restrictions, yeah, for the business activity, for the industry, so this already been impacted many people. That's why we need to extend, to enlarge, yeah, the coverage of social spending. And I think we have the problem how we should extend the data because we only have the data up to 18.8 million family. If we want to extend up to 30 million, up to 40 million, so we have struggle. We struggle to find the data. And also if we want to support the small medium enterprise, I think we need the correlation, yeah, between the data for the small medium enterprise and also for the pure family. So I think the data is the main challenge. This already impacted in the absorption. So we can say that the absorption could be could be optimal. And also I think since we have several programs, yeah, we have rice support program, cash transfer program, we have several programs that targeted many segments in the community. So basically, some people receive twice of the program, so there will be overlapping in the policy. And I think, yeah, the public participation process in determining the policy intervention is very important. Government support, yeah, government provide the support for the pure family, and I think many people need to monitor the activity, whether the program already been well targeted, yeah, the support already received by the family that need it, yeah, it is very important. So why the Ministry of Finance to do the policy, we are doing intensive coordination with the NP2K. And also I think we utilize the survey from other institutions regarding the World Bank, NGO, university to see the effectiveness of the policy. So we realize that maybe some policy need to be improved. We need to improve the target, the people that should receive the benefits. So basically, continue monitoring and evaluation is very important to make the policy become more effective and efficient in targeting the pure family. Next. So what are the main lessons going forward? So lesson from the what happened in the 2020, I think the transparency and openness is very important because we need prompt action, we need good action, yeah, and we need public participation because, yeah, the government support need to be well targeted, need to reach many people as possible. So that's why the transparency must be put in place in every budgeting process, yeah, regarding how we should provide the tax incentive to support for the small medium enterprise, cash transfer, everything should be transparent. And I think, yeah, a strong and effective coordination and understanding between the executive and legislative is very important because when the government want to do the action, provide the money, the support to the community, to the people, I think the approval from the parliament, the support from the parliament is very important. And in Indonesia, we can say that we have very strong relationship, we have very good relationship with the parliament. Basically, the parliament always support what the government doing. So the parliament provide the selling, yeah, the selling, budget selling for the government. And with that budget selling, the government could take necessary action, necessary step to respond to the pandemic. And also, I think, the participation of the media is also important. They should monitor the policy, the implementation of the policy, whether it is appropriately targeted the poor people, it is received by the people that needed the support. It is very important. So I think, again, we always try to promote the transparency, because transparency really helps us to support the improvement of the policy. Openness is also very important. We need to hear the comment from community, from other institutions regarding the policy, what need to be improved. And more importantly, we need to always communicate the policy to the people, to the community. That's why I think every month or maybe twice a month, we always doing like press conference to communicate the government policy regarding the government support to handle the pandemic. How we will provide social spending for the community. So basically, the policy is open. Everybody could watch. So if there are not properly implemented, we could improve the policy. Basically, the participation of the whole community is very important in improving the effectiveness and the efficiency of the policy. So I think the case from Indonesia. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. And I think what you're saying is critical, that transparency, openness, and public participation needs to be at the heart of every budgetary process. So thank you very much for that. We're going to have questions at the end of the three countries presenting. So if now we can please move on to Mongolia. If you can please share your presentation, or I can also share it if you prefer. Thank you, Narachimeng.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
You're a bit faint, but we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, let me just warm up a little bit. Now, is it okay now?
From my side, yes. Yes, I seem to be getting a lot of nods. So yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay, and here is we briefly talk and share with the Mongolian experience response to the COVID, and since last year, and we take some measurements, and here is the screen. We can see the COVID cases over the population, the 5.8% over the population. We have that case, and from that case, the 92.3% is recovered, and the 0.4% is we had this rate, and and for the vaccination record, we have the 63.4% over the population is vaccinated fully. And for the economic growth, it is quite interesting. And after government measurements was taken, the economic growth quite treated, as we can see, they're from -10 to -5. And the predicted rate before the COVID is 5, but unfortunately we had this great end of the 2020. And because the service, trade, mining, transport, all sector was down, because of the COVID. And what we do respond to COVID from the government, we have policy package to recover the economic growth and other social security supports. And as we can see, the screen and the left-hand side, the table, and the country cyclical policy measures, including the social insurance, tax, customs exemptions, and welfare supports, such as the cash transfer to the quarantine period, and around $100 each people, and the loan for supporting entrepreneurs and companies who are suffering in pandemic periods, and the other measurements also taken. And the 2020 that we have such 1.8 billion USD package was taken. And this year we continued these package programs, and also we added the loan for supporting entrepreneurs, as I mentioned before. The package size is 3.6 billion US economic recovery package, and which is started in first quarter of this year, I think so. And what we have the sources for responding COVID, and we have the relocation and the new grant loans from the international donors and partners. Also, we manage the fiscal budgets, such as the school lunch is saved during the pandemic because of the school off. We transferred these funds to the health sector for responding to COVID-19, and also the government reserve fund we are spending for the response to COVID. And currently we have the indicator of the economic growth, and we projected the growth is 6.5 the end of during this year, and the second quarter we have the 6.3. This means quite accurate with the predicted level. And this is the screen shows what the policy taken by the government. Is very detailed information on the screen. If you're interested, and maybe you later, and I just skip because of time matter. Yeah. What's the challenge for the Mongolian government effort to fiscal transparency, COVID-19 related response resources spending? Yes, we have the same problem with Indonesia and other nations. They said that the data collecting problems, yes, we have also too, because the collecting accurate data related to the COVID is very, very difficult, except the resource of the international fund, which indicated only for the COVID-19. The rest of all budget entities spend their own response fiscal over the COVID. They spending available fiscal classification. Currently, we don't have the COVID, name it COVID, and currently we don't have the economic classification, name it COVID. And it means that we collecting data problem. Yeah, this is the publishing is not problem, but the generating data and related to COVID is quite complicated. And currently we can generate and publish the data which are funded by the international organizations that only focused on COVID. And also we can publish the COVID data which I spent from the fiscal budget hitting only for the COVID actions, such as the cash transfer to the each person etc. Also cash transfer to vaccination supports like that. And we using that channels for disclosure the data through TV, social media, websites, and that channels we are using currently. The websites, the budget entities, its website can disclose that their own COVID-related data. For example, here is the website. The Ministry of Health provides the COVID-19 related information and some of the budget resources in the official's websites. It's sorry, it's in a local language. It's saying the vaccination rate and yeah, that's the COVID numbers, how many cases, how many deaths we have, and this information published in daily basis. And also the right-hand side of the screen, the health sector development program with disclosed loans and assistance from the Asian Development Bank is disclosed by the Ministry of Health and Sports, how much grant and fund they received, how they can spend for what. That is the data released by the Ministry of Health. And here is also we have another side websites. The Ministry of Health collaborate with the international organizations such as United Nations and other donor organizations. They disclose the data in English, and such as the daily updates on the COVID, impacts on people, impacts on businesses, and exchange rates and prices, and aid in donation policy measures and media monitoring and mobility, such like that. And the right-hand side on the screen, the situation in Mongolia during the COVID-19 pandemic, and by the bar chart. And here is the National Emergency Agency's website. They also publish the funds which funded by the local organizations and citizens, also the donor organizations from the abroad. And here is the website of the Ministry of Finance. We disclose the donor assistance and technical assistance and from the donor organization ADB. As we can see that the right-hand side of the screen and the corner, ADB grant is quite sizable, and then China and also European countries support and technical assistance. That data we are disclosed and by the monthly basis, how much we can receive and how the money is spent for what. And what are the main lessons going forward is, yes, we agreed, previous presenters, yeah, the quality of the policy measure is very important. Yes, we agree that, and we trying to improve the quality of the policy implementations, emphasize particularly into the networking in primary and medium level management level is quite difficult. And once the government decided to take some actions, it's not accurate in the lower and medium level of the policy makers. We are planning how can we fill up that policy gap in the lower level, and we're also thinking about that. And also we are improve the citizens' engagement through their websites and also other transparency platforms such as the Glass Account platform we are using now. Through that platform, we collecting the citizens' review for the COVID-19, including the budget and implementations, actions, policy actions, such like that. Yes, and thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation. Please feel free if you have any clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those valuable insights and for emphasizing the key need for openness, oversight, and transparency throughout all these processes. Without any further ado, if we can please go to Undersecretary Rolando Toledo from the Philippines to share his experiences.
Hi, Raquel. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, this is Hazel from DBM from the Philippines, and I will be presenting on behalf of Undersecretary Rolando Toledo, who will be joining us in a while. He just stepped out for a very brief meeting, but no worries, he will be here later with us.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Okay, for a while.
Would you prefer that we did the gift presentation first? Because we could also do that. We could ask Aura to present if you'd like a bit more time.
We could do that if you want to.
Aura, sorry to put you on the spot, but can we go ahead with that? I'll share your presentation.
Thank you, Raquel, and no worries at all.
Thank you.
And thank you, Hazel, also for being so nice. Well, hi, everyone. It is very nice to see you all today. As some of you know, I'm Aura Martinez, Gifts Coordinator for Knowledge, Technical Assistance, and Collaboration. And today it is my enormous pleasure to take the occasion of Gifts' 10-year anniversary to share with you how we have been using the fiscal data for emergency response guide for COVID-19. Next, please. Also, as you know, last year, faced with the very dooming reality of COVID-19 pandemic, but restless as we are in the fight for accountability, the GIFT network came together to leverage collective knowledge from, amongst others, the stakeholders you see on screen: 9 ministries of finance, 16 civil society organizations, and 12 international organizations, whom we thank a lot, and some of you are present today. Thank you very much. Next. Following then an online consultation, the Fiscal Data for Emergency Response Guide for COVID-19 was released in August of 2020, containing data sets and data fields categorized in the 4 dimensions that you can see on screen, and in essence comprises a detailed taxonomy on what information needs to be produced, systematized, and published for better internal decision-making, coordination, and enhanced fiscal transparency of governmental financial response against the COVID-19 devastating effects. Next, please. I'm sorry if you are listening to my dog. She's also very excited about this. Well, from there, where do we work from there? We asked ourselves. We set to fulfill the objectives of the guide by constituting a tool for specific and actionable agenda, and continue learning from research and reports published by international cooperation community, from the institutions you see there, but from many others as well as our continued exchanges with civil society organizations and ministries of finance around the world, and specifically also from IBP's questionnaire for the report on managing COVID funds, the accountability gap. Next, please. Having done that, we endeavored in specific application to identify recommendations that take into account an in-depth analysis of a country's context. For that, we took a two-folded approach, including the analysis of the regulatory framework and separately the analysis of available information. Next, please. To deploy this approach, we have been partnering with the World Bank for in-depth analysis of the West Balkans region and with the Euro Foundation for Georgia in specific. We have only been able to do this thanks to the financial support of the government of the United Kingdom, Sweden, and Denmark in the separate initiatives. So I wanted to thank and highlight these partnerships at this moment. Please. For the analysis of the regulatory framework, we are looking at the topics you see on screen. And the difference between the ones you see in black and the ones you see in dark orange is that the last two are only part of the Georgia-specific analysis, since we are taking it from a civil society perspective. All in all, in this analysis, our focus is on provisions establishing, documenting, reporting, and disclosing mandates, as well as specifications of operational differences in emergency situation. This is as a basis on which governments and other key stakeholders, such as civil society, can consider potential improvement towards transparency, fiscal transparency under an emergency circumstance. Next, please. For the second part of the analysis, we're using specifically the taxonomy in the COVID-19 guide, taking into account emergency and counter-cyclical spending to address accessibility of information, including the data and the data formats available. This is supplementary to the legal framework and enables us to flag both implementation gaps as well as good practices that we can identify in each country. Next. Now, well, coming to a type of results that we can get using this methodology. And as a disclaimer, I want to stress that these are preliminary findings and a work in progress specifically for the West Balkans, as we are just starting our Georgian in-depth work so that you won't see tonight or today for whoever is in the morning, the results and findings today. The governments that we are assessing are that of Bosnia-Herzegovina in their several levels of government, Serbia, and North Macedonia at the federal level government. I will try to take you through some of the information we were able to unearth using this methodology, but please keep in mind that there is a vast number of other results and findings, as you can probably already gather from looking at just the amounts and broad scope of topics presented as part of the research in previous slides that we came up with out of the methodologies I mentioned. So starting with this graph, sorry, that was a long-winded introduction for this work in progress. Starting from this graph, from the outset, when we face a comparative perspective, we have found that governments, even when able to approve their original budgets under the emergency circumstances, had to adopt one or two rebalances due to the pandemic effects, and they did so in different points during the year, as you can see, which all in itself, Suad mentioned and also Jason, constitutes a challenge for oversight and accountability purpose, and also comes a lot to the point of Benjamin on where was the audit institution able to tap in. Next, please. Well, and in terms of how kind of budget reallocations can be identified, in this graph, we see that in most of the cases of this specific set of governments, the original and rebalanced amounts are available, through some of them have to be manually compared. So that is also an important insight on whether availability of information actually comes into monitor and oversight. Next, please. Well, and nonetheless, in this graph, as this graph shows, in terms of presenting the information in all the budget classifications, sorry, I missed the screen, so I cannot see, sorry. Well, in terms of presenting the information in all the budget classifications, and therefore allowing the public to know who, where, and what was the money planning to go, that meaning the estimated expenditures, and then where it actually went, that meaning the actual expenditures, the documentation on emergency fiscal policy packages presents a very heterogeneous outlook. Next, please. It is not so the case for the public investment information, for which pretty much in line with a global trend, we do not see, except for the Sarajevo Canton as a highlight, information on accelerated or delayed investment projects or capital investment. Next, please. In terms of healthcare and spending, we were able to find some information on health workforce. And in the case of Serbia, for example, it is quite comprehensive as we can find the type of personnel, the increase of payment, and whether this increase will be permanent, which is information that not in all countries we can see, and it certainly differs from global trends on this matter. And next, please. Also, in this graph, we can show the information we were able to find on different types of beneficiaries. And as you can see, both in estimated and actual expenditures and beneficiaries being taken care of for different programs. As you can see, information related with business beneficiaries is the one that is most available in this set of government, again, going a lot with general trends we see for many countries. Thank you. Next, please. In our research, we are also including a dimension that goes to the actual accessibility of the information, which tries to grasp how findable the information really is. This is a type of methodology that has been largely used by private sector outreach efforts, as well as user-centered design initiatives, but recently also used by specific measurements such as the Open Data Barometer, or governments in specific that are trying to measure their efficiency when trying to actually reach or not the public. So what you see in this graph is the answers from our local PFM experts from each country, which means very experienced, interested people, ranking the topics from easier to harder to find, being the topics with a higher orange point, the hardest ones to look into. Next, please. We can see now the same information, but in an average for the analyzed government for a more regional approach. So all in all, from the last one and this one, we can see that budget information is the easiest to find, even if it's limited, but some specific information on subsidies, grants, health, staffing, and payroll is harder to find. And this gives us a little bit of an outline of where can we either focus our site or implement better outreach or better usability and findability measurements. Next, please. Keeping the same spirit, we see that, as we know, format matters. As shown by this graphic, we have a very different picture, which is the green bars. If we assess availability of information as a whole, no matter the format, then that we get in the green lines if we think about machine readable formats. Next, please. You can click again, it's just, I think, thank you. This type of assessment also allows us to highlight specific practices that we find noticeable. For example, we found that North Macedonia published a COVID-19 specific website with key variables for more than 6,000 pandemic-related contracts. This website allows downloading open data files, just Excel files, and links the contracts with the e-procurement portal. Next slide, please. We think it is a very interesting practice, as with the link to the e-procurement portal from the Fiscal Transparency Portal specific for COVID-19, we can take a look on additional information. That is, for example, on the tender and the award stages, the tender lots, the number of bidders, the highest and lower bids, the award criteria. So as we can see by the graphs and the findings today, while we find general trends for the region, we are also able to highlight specific practices. Unfortunately, we only have time for this one tonight that I wanted to show that links budget to procurement with very punctual data points. But I will end my presentation. Next slide, please. Just setting some inquiries to the table, as I will very much like to know if you find these findings surprising, and what do you think this type of assessment would render out in your country. Also, of course, should you have any questions, please feel free to ask away or reach out later through my contact information at any point. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for all our speakers tonight.
Thank you very much, Aura, for that insightful presentation. I'm sure people are going to come back to you, contact you to find out a bit more. If we are ready to go through to the Philippines, please let's go ahead.
Yes, we'll be sharing our slides in a while.
Thank you.
There you go. So good morning, everyone. We are very grateful for this opportunity, and it's really, truly humbling to be recognized as one of the countries alongside Australia, Norway, and Peru with trailblazing efforts in promoting transparency, accountability, and citizen participation despite the pandemic. So allow me to share with you some of these initiatives that we had in the Philippines. So at the onset of the pandemic, the national government publicized and submitted COVID-19 reports to Congress, which include information and updates on the targets and actual accomplishments of programs and strategies in response to the health crisis. Next slide, please. Yes, so this report, as I mentioned, contains the targets and actual accomplishments, as well as updates on the enhancement of healthcare responses to control and mitigate the pandemic. In addition, next slide, we also had information on the utilization of the COVID-19 budget, tax relief measures, as well as grants and loans secured to support COVID-19 responses published online in respective government agency websites. Aside from this, next slide, please. The Philippines has an official COVID-19 response website, which is the covid19.gov.ph, and conducts daily press briefings to report on timely and comprehensive information about the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. We also have an online portal which provides information on procurement projects undertaken amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Aside from the proactive disclosure of information across various implementing agencies, the national government also had several platforms for citizens to directly engage with national government officials and to provide their feedback on the government's pandemic response. So for example, next slide, the national government conducted the Daguao 2020 Open Government Virtual Town Hall meetings, where we had a total of 10 sessions and 38 regional sessions on education, employment, stimulus packages, and others. This enabled about 212,226 participants to have an open and protected space to raise their questions and concerns on key national and local programs, issues, and plans amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. You will see that the suggestions and concerns raised during these virtual sessions were documented and also uploaded online, and were also used as key references in shaping and updating government policies to ensure better public service performance and service delivery. And we also recognize that one of the significant areas of accountability is being aware of the varying needs of vulnerable groups and taking targeted responses accordingly. That is why the Philippines also published a gender impact assessment survey, which is a nationwide initiative involving about 23 diverse organizations in partnership with the Commission on Human Rights. So in this assessment, you will see that we have gathered about 1,000 respondents' interviews, and we had qualitative and quantitative evidence on the subject matter. The results were very valuable to us since this guided and improved various government initiatives for women. So in the next slide, you will see that the Philippine Commission on Women created a section on their website where women can easily access COVID-19 response policies, programs, and services intended for them. Moreover, agencies carrying out social protection services prioritize women and other vulnerable groups as the program's target beneficiaries. Nonetheless, we also experienced several challenges alongside other countries, and the main challenge that we have encountered is balancing the urgency and timeliness of COVID-19 responses in a volatile economic environment, while also ensuring transparency and accountability in governmental processes. We recognize that during this pandemic, implementing speedy adjustments and exceptional measures to address the adverse effects of the pandemic at the onset may actually challenge traditional approaches in managing risk, inefficiencies, budgetary allocations, and even corruption. Thus, to ensure that we have adequate control and tracking of these emergency measures, we included publication and reporting requirements in our COVID-19 emergency decrees, such as the Bayanihan Tugilas 1 Act, and in succeeding government policies and issuances, which encourage government agencies to report and publish information in a comprehensive and timely manner and in an open format. And given this challenges, we also had several lessons that we have learned and will be very valuable going forward. And our main takeaway from this is that even if the COVID crisis brought about great uncertainties, entailing tough choices and trade-offs, we see that this must not be used as an excuse by governments to undermine transparency and accountability. Specifically, we learned that the following initiatives are actually substantially beneficial moving forward. Like, for example, drafting key policy guidelines during emergencies. It is very important that open government principles are heavily considered. As such, it may be best to actually require government agencies to regularly publish reports and disclose other relevant COVID-19 information in open data formats. It is also beneficial if the details on procurement contracts linked to the COVID-19 are disclosed by the government. Also, we learned that the formulation and execution of key policy responses must also be done in a more open and collaborative way. This is where there are adequate mechanisms for citizen participation in which they will voice out their opinions and their suggestions. Finally, we think that it is also best to strengthen current capacities and systems for accountability in the annual budget process to better prepare for future emergencies. So that ends my presentation. If you have any concerns or comments or questions, Yusek Toledo will also be joining us later in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And congratulations once again for the Philippines coming forth within the top 4, I should say, in that study. I note that we're practically out of time, but I think we need to take some time to get some questions from the audience and comments. So please raise your hand if you have a question or a comment, and we can go through them. Thank you. Are there no questions or comments? Then we are going to finish the session 1 minute over. So then I will have met my...
I have a question, but
Juan Pablo, you don't want me to meet my timeline.
No.
Please go ahead.
No, well, on behalf of the team, let me thank everyone for such a vast and relevant information shared. We could spend many hours commenting and having questions in each of these cases, including my colleagues Aura's presentation. But let me then raise a question, a general question for the ministries of finance representatives, and of course the people that have been there. And the question is, when the ministries of finance are at the center of reallocating and of making sure that the operating and implementing ministries have the money they need, they sometimes need to overlook on some issues and for the sake of speed go over other considerations. So the question is, to what extent do you think that transparency becomes a tool for forcing budget implementers, budget execution line ministries to better use the funds? We like to say a gift that transparency helps better implementation. Was this right during the COVID emergency? Thank you. And we can start. Yeah, with the order. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes. So shall we go firstly Indonesia, then Mongolia, and then Philippines?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So basically, we realize that the MFF should be the center regarding the budget allocation to support the pandemic, to support the health sector. So basically, we understand that the Ministry of Finance, of course, we will receive a lot of proposal, many proposal from line ministry and also from a stakeholder. For example, from the Ministry of Public Work, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Social Affairs. So everybody is trying to propose the action to tackle the pandemic, to respond the pandemic. However, of course, we need to coordinate regarding the proposal. That's why in Indonesia, we already established the task force to handle the COVID that led by the Minister of Coordinating Affairs for Economic Activity. So basically, all of the proposal will be put in table, and then we evaluate which are the most important. So basically, then we decide that the most important policy will be funded, will be allocated. Once the decision made, then we announce to the public that the government will do this action. For example, we will target some certain sector, we will provide support to certain community. So basically, all of the proposal will be discussed and then communicated to the public. So I think that's quick response from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go through to Mongolia?
Yes, we I fully agree with the transparency actions for the better performance of the budget. And we have several laws and regulations that forcefully publish the fiscal data through the platform, transparency platform. And yes, we agreed that that policy. And for the next year, we are improving the platform, and thanks to the international assistance, including the gift team, we are planning the platform and the legal environments for the transparency, and we're trying to reach the international level which transparency is accurate for the fiscal. And this is the one things we are heading for, the transparency improvements. And the other points for the emergency cases, that the intensive responses is needed from the government. I can't answer maybe I could answer this way. And for the emergency actions from the funding, we have to manage the situation, and this is the pros and cons side for the implementation. In some case, we did policy gap and intense actions, and yes, I have the, and personally, I try to optimistic for the intensive reaction for the emergency cases. But in the COVID pandemic period, it needs the policy measurements need to be in a very short period, and we have to manage the situation. And also we have to find the resources from other sides or manage the local resources. this is the we are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. And then over to the Philippines, please. You seem to be breaking up.
Hi everyone. Good morning or good evening. Sorry, I'm making an odd what do you call this multitasking. We're having a multitask because, as you know, in the Philippines right now we are preparing our budget so we're preparing for that hearing in Congress. So I'm sorry that I haven't presented earlier, but I'm glad that I'm here right now for the Q&A. Okay, so hi JP. Hi everyone.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much, Undersecretary Rolando Toledo. Welcome.
Yeah.
Please take the floor.
Okay. On the question, yeah, we recognize that it's important to have a speedy implementation of programs and activities. However, it's also important to ensure transparency, accountability in these responses. And we learned that including reporting and publication requirements in policy, well, public issuances and emergency decrees is very beneficial. So really, it is beneficial since it allows the government, especially the non-government sector, to monitor and evaluate government's COVID-19 response. For example, the regular publications and reports to Congress help our citizens to have a more informed and productive engagement with the government. It also allows citizens to monitor where the taxes went and where there's this use is in effective and efficient manner. So this is also enables the, of course, the public to demand accountability from government implementing agencies especially that they're aware of the resources provided for the COVID response and recovery. So thank you.
Thank you kindly and for taking time from your budget process, your hectic budget process to join us. Thank you. So if there are no more, if there aren't any more urgent questions, I think we can end the session. Thank you very much to all of the presenters, especially those that are on the opposite side of the world and taking time from their personal lives to be with us this evening. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. To everyone, have a fabulous day forward, and please keep engaging on this issue. There are many interesting insights that were shared today, and people have shared information that we can all look at and keep engaging even outside of this week's sessions. So thank you and go well. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.